Thank you for tuning in to CrossTalk. This is the Candidates 2021 edition, as we will look to speak to folks who are going to be on the ballot in both Whitman and Hanson, who are seeking your vote come May. I think it's May 15th. That's just
May
a quick
15th.
guess. And so just throwing it out there, I believe it's like the third Saturday of the month. That's how the two towns do it.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to get the folks who are running for office to sit down and chat with us. This conversation, joining us, is Mr. Joe Weeks. Joe is he's no stranger to having a conversation with me. We talk about so many different things. Glad to have him joining us. He is a candidate for the Board of Selectmen in Hanson. Joe, welcome back to the program.
Hello, how are you? Thanks for having me. Do appreciate it. And
how's the family doing?
The family's doing fantastic, and it's funny because usually when we talk, we're in the studio or something like that. But you can definitely tell because I've done some stuff with your radio show. You get the radio voice going on right now, and I love it. I love being able to see it in action. This is fantastic.
Excellent.
But the family's doing fantastic. They really are. We're gearing up for the holidays and the nicer weather, and everyone's doing great. I think they're starting school. They're going back to school. They were doing the hybrid thing for the past few months, and they're starting school up on Monday. So they're all excited and eager to see what's going on.
Joe, you are a candidate for selectman. Tell us what's making you run this time, and what are your thoughts about being a potential selectman?
Yeah, so I'm really excited about it. We had a couple more candidates involved, but one of the incumbents, Wes, had not turned in his papers, and I can't say enough how happy I was with his representation. I wish him well in his retirement. But with that being said, it does seem like I'm feeling good about where we're at right now, and we're going to be running a campaign pretty strong and pretty aggressively. So we're ready to go for that. I'm very, very excited to be able to have the opportunity to earn some votes and hopefully be able to represent the citizens of the town, though. This is something that I've wanted to be able to work towards for a very long time. I've served on many, many committees, many boards, and I'm trying really hard to learn all the issues and try to be as informed as possible so we can represent everybody fair and equally.
You kind of anticipated that what I was going to say is you and I cannot assume that everybody knows who Joe Weeks is. What are some of the committees and the boards that you've had the privilege of serving on and getting your feet wet and being a part of the municipality?
Yeah, so my goal is to be able to knock on as many doors as I possibly can, and that's first and foremost. I want to try and meet as many people as possible to make sure that I can introduce myself, get to know some of the folks, some of the personal issues that they might be going through or want to bring up, and then be able to take that and represent it well if I'm lucky enough and fortunate enough to be elected. But yeah, as far as my history in Hanson, I've served on a whole bunch of committees, and I feel pretty good about that. I've been on the Capital Improvement Committee since day one in Hanson. So it's been about 10 years since we officially bought a house and became homeowners and really kind of started our roots here. A little over 10 years, I think, actually now. And then, I joined the Hanson Housing Authority, and I served 6 years total, I believe. But with that being said, 4 of those years I served as a member in various capacities, and then the final 2 years I was there, I was fortunate enough to be lucky to be the chairman. So we did a lot of good, did a lot of grant writing, really did a lot. We worked really well as a group. I was very, very proud of the work that we did there. And then I served on the planning board for 5 years. 2 of those years, I was also the chairman there. I was actually chairman of the Housing Authority and the Planning Board roughly at the same time, so it was a little bit of overlap. And I learned a lot. We were able to get a lot of projects, kind of figured out, started at the very least, finalized, which is really important. But yeah, I felt really good being part of that group of people. It was a really good group effort. And I've been very fortunate because you learn a little bit about the finances of the town, the priorities of the town, how to try to finagle, different budgetary issues, as well as trying to find, dollars here and there. planning board, I was able to learn a lot about zoning, about the regulations. Have somewhat of a say in, what the future of the town would look like. And really, we one of the things I really liked a lot, the housing authority and the planning board, was that, if we had somebody in a development or within a potential development that has been sitting, unfinished for years, we had the ability to go in there and get our, roll up our sleeves and kind of get some of these projects done. So I feel good about that. And the housing authority was just the quality of life. I mean, we had a lot of great people on that. So yeah, I was very fortunate.
So you got your signatures, you were able to get on the ballot. I'm sure you've had conversations with residents. What are you feeling are the top issues? What are they telling you are some of the things that concern them and that they want you to be involved with if elected?
Yeah, so those are great questions. I mean, it seems like some of these issues tend to come up kind of perennially. And it's one of the reasons why I try to be as involved as I possibly can, because I really feel like I can try and make a difference, to try to use some of that experience, some of that knowledge, and try to, in my unique experience just living in the town, to try to help out and relate to folks and try to see where we can go. So, talking to people on average, what they're talking about primarily is typically, taxes, what tax is going to look like. School issue has popped up again in another way, but still equally as important as the school issues that have happened in the past, whether it be funding it, just from a basic perspective. We have the regional school agreement that I'm very eager to see what's going on come the May 3rd town meeting, when everybody comes together as a group, as a community, and decides on the fate of that. Increasing businesses, the commercial tax base, not just the business tax base. And then, if I'm fortunate enough to come into that seat, we also have to deal with a lot of the decisions that have come from town meeting, whether that be the expansion of the new definitions for marijuana, with the delivery service that's been proposed. I'm always big on trying to get sidewalks. I know there's lots of things happening related to that. Coincidentally enough, we started that when I first started running for the planning board. I'm glad to see a lot of those projects are still going. I want to make sure that they kind of finish, and we can keep expanding things like that. But those are the big ones. And, my unique experience with this is that, I have kids obviously in the town. I've raised my family here, and I have extended family that live in this town. But my grandparents also live in this town, and my wife's grandparents, or my grandmother lives in this town. And, one of the biggest concerns that I've seen across the board is trying to get all of these things funded, especially given the current school issue, where we're looking at, if we can't get it funded, making cuts somewhere. And I know the finance committee is working really hard to try to do it the best they can to solve that problem. And, they're doing a good job. I do appreciate the work they're doing, but it does come to the voters to figure out how they want to handle it. They want to take the Board of Selectmen, the Finance Committee recommendations, or go a different route. So there's a lot of concerns around that. But I just talking to my grandparents this afternoon, coincidentally enough, and they were talking, because they're on fixed income. We got to try and figure out, what's the balance between the needs of my children that are going to schools and the services that are here versus the fixed income and the folks that really just can't afford it. What does that balance look like? And I feel like I'm have a unique experience in being able to try to appreciate both of those perspectives and try to find a balance that is somewhat fair across the board. So those are the big ones. What are people's futures going to look like? What is their tax rates going to look like? It's a pretty complicated system, but I feel pretty good that I can try and take it head on.
You mentioned during that answer the regional school agreement that's the town is agreed to stay within a school district with the town of Whitman.
Yeah.
What's your thought on that agreement? Have you mulled it over? Have you had a chance to dissect it and think of, if we stay in the agreement, this is what we're going to have to do? Because the agreement has changed from per pupil to where now it's changed in
the statutory method.
the methods have changed. Is it better for us to stay in that, and then in the long run, it'll all even out, and we won't have to worry about, incurring a $1 or $2 million deficit to our municipal budget? Or do we start over? Do we do a standalone? Because basically, if you look at the district, I believe that the district, the agreement itself only covers what the high school. It's not for the entire district, is it?
No, it's mainly for the high school.
Right.
As far as the middle school, the elementary schools go, we have control over those.
Correct.
But yeah, the regional school agreement, though, was pretty substantial in terms of its budget and the way that it was negotiated, years ago, but also now. it was some of the biggest problems that happened. And I stood up at town meeting and I expressed this to everybody that, there's no hiding my feelings around it. I never liked the idea that the school committee was comprised of 5 representatives from one town and 4 of another, because a vast majority of the votes that were taken only needed a simple majority for it to pass. So unless you could actually convince somebody on the other side to vote, which it's happened enough, it's not like it's something that the school committee collectively as a whole has been working very, very well over the years. So it's not anything negative about that. It's just having that arrangement leading up to the school agreement now put us in a position where we are looking at a substantial deficit. Someone had brought up, in Whitman years ago, well, not years ago, but a year ago, 2 years ago, about the statutory method. And I think there's been lots of conversation and debate about that. So I don't necessarily want to get into all of that because it's already kind of been decided at the last town meeting when the town decided to go into that agreement. But it did put us in a substantial deficit because the ballot question failed to fund it, but the town accepted it, which puts us in a pretty decent hole. And, again, the finance committee is trying really hard to try to figure this out. But we were looking at it back in October that if it didn't pass, then we were looking at it default going to the full $2 million, and any type of assistance, any type of assistance or agreement that the Whitman committee members had given us in terms of breaking it up over 2 years would have been null and void. And in terms of financial planning and trying to figure out what your life is going to look like, gambling that on a 2-month decision when, as far as I'm concerned, it's all kind of documented. The Whitman Finance Committee, the school committee, the selectmen all were like, no, this is the best you're going to get, take it or leave it. At least they were being transparent as far as I'm concerned. So the idea was they're willing to work with us in that way. So it was a matter of, did you want to gamble and throw that agreement back to the school committee when you already knew the answer was going to be no, it's not, and the votes were already there. So now it's just a matter of figuring out how are we going to fund it. And one of the reasons why I wanted to be, part of this race is because I really want to have involvement in this moving forward, because these are things that I was talking about, openly and publicly about this coming to a head at some point for years now. And I really want to be part of this so that we can have a really methodical conversation, because the town of Hanson is looking at a pretty substantial tax increase come May 3rd, and we're looking at it at the town meeting, and that's going to be in the ballpark of about $1.5 million to $1.8 million, somewhere in there. $1.8 million is really what you need to hit. $1.5 million is just a bare bones minimum with some cuts, I believe, which is the equivalent to about a little over $450 increase in taxes on a $350,000 house, if memory serves. So I think, it's substantial. It is, but to gamble that, last town meeting to figure out, to see if we're going to get a better deal, it wasn't. The state just defaults back to statutory, and unfortunately, that is a huge deficit for Hanson. So in the back of my mind, I'm thinking to myself, how do we actually try to get folks to be able to game plan for this and be able to afford property taxes, know what's coming down the pike? And the only way I can do that is by being transparent and trying to, tell the truth and meet people where they're at and try to have a frank conversation about it, because this issue isn't going away. We're going to be right back here next year trying to fill the gap of the second year's worth of deficit based off that statutory agreement. We're not out of the woods yet, but I really want to try and do this in a way that doesn't affect folks on fixed income like my grandparents, that does support the kids that are going to schools like my children, but also does it responsibly and with transparency that takes the voters' best interest at heart, because they're the ones that this impacts the most. And I really feel passionate about that. So yeah, I mean, that's what got me in this race.
Okay. Well, what's even more interesting, and you know, there's a new dynamic to this, because John Stanbrook, who is currently your town administrator, is your outgoing town administrator, as the school district hired him to be the director of business and finance, which means now you have a void going into town meeting. Now, I don't know if there's been any kind of discussion where he'll stay on and there'll be some kind of an overlap. What are your concerns about the next person who is hired? What are some of the things that you'd want to see in the next town administrator to be able to handle these, not only the major finance issues that the town's dealing with, but a possible departure from a regional school agreement? Tell me what you want to see in your next town administrator.
What I'm looking for is a leader, someone who's compassionate, someone who's understanding, obviously somebody that knows the job really well. This is not the first time that Hanson's gone without a town administrator. It's happened, 4 times in the past 10 years, something like that.
Yeah.
I think we've gone through at least 4 of them, if you're including the interim town administrator. So, it's if there's one thing that Hanson's known for, it's being resilient. So we're going to be able to pull through it. We always do. We always have. We've always had great leaders to be able to do that. But in terms of a town administrator, we're looking for someone that's going to be able to really understand the budget, not only just the current crisis, but being able to project issues into the future. What is that going to look like? Being able to do it in a mindful and planful way. And someone that's going to work with the Board of Selectmen, in somewhat of a partnership, because, as a board, we're going to be, the Board of Selectmen, the way it works is that, we are technically the CEOs of the town. Say we, if I'm lucky enough to get in there, but the Board of Selectmen they're the CEOs of the town, and they have to be able to make decisions in conjunction with what the town administrator wants. And the town administrator has to be able to carry out those directives pretty flawlessly. But the Board of Selectmen has to be able to rely on the town administrator to be able to give sound quality advice, and to be able to be efficient and reliable. So really, I'd be looking for someone that knows, I know aside from finances, but someone that's related to finances, someone that kind of knows, how to plan, what does a budget look like? How is it going to impact everybody? One of the things I'm really worried about is that if we don't fund and if we don't plan our budgets accordingly, that's going to affect our ability to provide services in town. We need someone that's going to be able to look at the whole picture. Will it affect transfer station? Will it affect the fire department? Will it affect the police department? Those are big chunks of the budget that is going to be affected over the next 2 years if we can't have a frank conversation about it. And we have great people. We have great people in this town working for us. And I really want to have someone in that spot that's going to be able to pull us through this and do the best they can to make sure it doesn't happen again when we have to make any type of substantial cuts. So really looking for a leader.
Okay. And what's interesting, you mentioned that, that there have been a few times that the town has had to endure without a town administrator. Fortunately, those multiple times, you had Mary Marini, who would step in, and Mary has since, she has retired, and doing good service and doing, again, before John was hired, she had to step in and spell whoever the town administrator was, and the community was fortunate. The town of Whitman, itself trying to pull itself out of financial straits, brought in a financial consultant. Would you be opposed, or would you want to see some kind of a consultant brought in to kind of evaluate the town's finances maybe put together a strategic long-term plan?
Oh, I'm not against any ideas. I think it's a fantastic idea. It just has to be the right person with the right intentions. And, anything that's going to help with the betterment of the town, I'm all for. So it's, it's a great idea. I think it's something that we should obviously look into. But it really just depends on the person and the qualified experience. So right person, right time, I'm all for it. But, it's hard to make a decision like that without looking at resumes and really talking about it.
Well, no one talking then now and knowing you saying, 1.5, $1.8 million deficit possibly. I mean, last year we were talking about an $800,000 deficit, and magically it was taken care of with some money that was uncovered. And I know that there's a division that happens when anybody ever mentions the word Prop 2.5 override and taxes being increased. Do you feel that this is going to be something that is going to have to be discussed eventually, that we may have to look seriously at doing a Prop 2.5 override? And how do you convince the folks who are ardently against raising their taxes, who might be on a fixed income, that this is going to be the best for everybody in the long run?
Yeah, I mean, short answer is yes. I mean, we have to have that hard conversation, because you cannot have increases in the tax needs without increasing the taxes. And honestly, I mean, I can tell you right now, you and I could spend another hour and a half talking about all the ideas that I have and all the complications that can arise from either raising taxes, not raising taxes, partially raising taxes. I think that's it's a huge topic. To go into it briefly, I think the idea is, if we don't raise taxes, we got to remember that the statutory method that was coming no matter what. I mean, it's really important to emphasize that was going to happen no matter what, whether it was the deal that the school committee was able to broker in terms of breaking it up into 2 years, or it happening 2 months after the October town meeting in full force in 1 year. That was happening. And I think the school committee was very clear on both sides that was happening. In addition to that, we as a town, we have contractual obligations. We have just increases, and we have things that we just need to pay for, and then that doesn't even account for necessarily immediate costs that just might happen to be something that we need to cover in the moment. Something that comes to mind is, the snow plowing in the winter. We're very lucky if we don't get any snow, but at the same time, those costs are astronomical if it does snow, and we have great roads. I mean, our highway department does a fantastic job with that. We're lucky to have the money there, but we only have so much that we can put in reserve and pull from. At some point, it's going to catch up. And I'm not a fan of putting projects into just the regular town budget. There should be things that are exempt from that. So costs are going to go up. They just are. It's a natural part of the life cycle of a budget in a town in terms of their needs. You have to weigh that against, because I don't want to pay any more taxes than I have to. I have to make a living, and I have a family to raise. I don't like the idea of it, which is why I want to put myself in this position, because I want to be able to do it responsibly, because I know my own experience. I know what I can afford and what I can't, and what the ramifications are. I want to have a say in that. Again, which is why I put myself out there so often. So I think the biggest thing for me is, how do you raise taxes responsibly that doesn't go and hurt anything? Because if you don't do it, and we do have $1.8 million, possibly maybe $1.5 million, depending on where they go with it. One of those numbers is just going to be the bare minimum to meet the needs the town currently has for the next fiscal year. If we don't do it, I really don't want, there's two things that can happen. I don't want cuts to come across the board. And how do you make those cuts? How do you determine which department's more important than the next? How do you do that? And then the second thing is, how are we going to be able to fund the departments so that we're actually competitive too? Because another thing I'm always thinking of, and this happened when I was in doing some work in Rockland on the finance committee way back. I don't want our departments to be a training institute for other towns. In other words, I want our officers and our fire department to have staff that aren't going to be worrying about having a job the next year because we can't afford their position. And then we bring them on just to have them have to go somewhere else because they're looking for more stable work. I want the people in the community to be in the community, living in the community, not worrying about being taken care of. And that doesn't even affect the idea that if we have to lay off somebody, what does that affect in terms of emergency response times and being able to man the stations just in general? You can only cut costs so much. I'm all for being responsible with money, but we are going to have a very, very serious conversation. May 3rd is going to be, a huge point to talk about a lot of these things. So I am interested in which way the town decides to vote, because it is, at the end of the day, up to the townspeople to make that decision. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of concerns. There really are, no matter which way you look at the problem.
We have a few minutes left, Joe. And again, I think we've touched upon a lot of the key issues and items. I want to make sure that we at least get to economic development and capital projects and give you a chance to kind of talk about that as somebody who hopes to get elected onto the Board of Selectmen. What are your thoughts in regards to the town's efforts when it comes to economic development and any capital projects, needed capital projects? And again, it's a wonky segue from talking about, oh no, we have deficits, to going economic development. Let's build things. But it's a question I have to ask as we're talking.
Well, I mean, they're related because that's another component. So I'm glad that you have a spot there for that. So, we're a bedroom community. We always have been, right? But we are getting to a point, and I've experienced this on the planning board, where there's a lot of developments going on, and some of them are half finished. Some of them weren't done right. One of the things I'm very proud of is that when I was chair, we would go down and have an open meeting with the developers there. And we literally go through and open up sewer caps, make sure that things were done right, they were following plan, and we'd hold people accountable to get the jobs done, so that we didn't have parts of the community that were half finished, or if we were holding on to some monies to make sure a project was done, that people weren't just skirting off and then waiting years. And then we find out there's like sinkholes in it. I was very much hands-on, and I'm very, very proud of the work that we were able to do. That being said, you try your best to be able to open up the commercial base. That's a great way to increase taxes as well. You have more businesses. We've been trying to get again, this goes back 5, 6, actually probably like 8 years now. I've been trying to get sidewalks in. We started some projects with Complete Streets and things along those lines to try and get some sidewalks in, which should be able to help businesses. I was asked, when I was the chair, to try to zone for recreational marijuana, try to be as inclusive as humanly possible. But inevitably, the town voted not to go that route. So we tried in various ways to bring solutions to the people to take a vote. We would have been able to bring in 3% off the top in terms of taxes. Even with this new definition of recreation, you're able to actually capture about around 3%, a little bit more, I think, to add to the tax base. I mean, those are solutions that the people have to take a vote on. I've been trying over time to be able to improve the town aesthetics, be able to do that. But again, it's up to the townspeople whether or not they want to go that route or find some other route. I'd like to be able to continue the work of trying to bring sidewalks in, try to beautify Main Street, all the stuff that everybody always has been talking about. I want to try and find solutions for that. Maybe talk to the folks at the Cranberry building to try to beautify that. But then the flip side is, we are a bedroom community, and this is part of my other issue with, what do you want to do for the taxes? Because I also don't want the town to necessarily be overdeveloped. We still have lots of proposals that are out there, and it's going to impact a lot of different things. Water drainage, water consumption. We always have bans nonstop. Think about adding another 20, 35 different homes all using water. What's that going to look like? What the runoff looks like? What the folks in the surrounding area, how are they going to be impacted? These are all things that are really important. And then, how do you add more to the tax base without having some other consequence affecting the town, like I said, overdevelopment, or not being able to actually put any more spots in there? Or if you provide some avenues, the townspeople have to say yes to those things. So there's lots of opportunities. The idea is, it goes back full circle, knocking on doors, seeing what people are into doing, holding town halls, having conversations, so that as a town, we can kind of identify what is it that our priorities are, and how do we identify as a community to actually solve the problem in a way that benefits the most amount of people possible. And that's what I'm all about, is trying to, bring economic development to this town in a way that holds true to our history, but also allows for the ease of the folks that already have homes here, so it doesn't burden them any more than it needs to.
As we wrap up our conversation here, anything that we haven't touched upon, but you feel you want to at least take a moment to talk about, or maybe you might want to reemphasize something that we discussed earlier in the conversation?
No, I think per usual, you do a heck of a job having those questions prepared. So you've been a very gracious host. I really appreciate the time and being able to speak with you.
And if folks want to reach out to Joe Weeks campaign, how can they do that?
Yeah, so you can email me at josephrweeks@yahoo.com. That's JOSEPHRWEEKS@yahoo.com. You can call me 781-267-3808. That's my my personal number. Give me a call whenever you want to. But I really just hope that that I'm able to earn your vote for the May 15th town election. I've been in this town for many, many years. Chose to raise my family here. I have my personal family, my wife's family. We've been here for generations upon generations, and very proud to call this town our home. I really hope to earn your vote on May 15th. And if I don't see you sooner, then I'll see you later, because I'll be knocking on some doors up until that day. So I hope to see and hear from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. And you know what? Again, you as the viewer, if you need to know more information, whether it's early voting, your voting status, the town clerk's office is an ideal place. If you don't know where to go to vote, again, contact the town clerk's office. I believe you can go to the Town of Hanson's website to get the copy. Because of COVID, things are a little bit different, so you may have to email or call, but that's the best way to find out information for the May 15th election. Get informed, get out and vote. I want to thank you for tuning in to this version of CrossTalk, the Candidates 2021 edition. Until next time, have yourself a great day.